everybody, my name is Injun Moon and welcome to iHome Church. For those of you joining us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our email list. Well, this morning, while I was thinking about the sermon topic, I was listening to the song, a beautiful song by Simon and Garfunkel. I'm sure you know. Many of you know this song. It's called Bridge Over Troubled Water. And, this song has graced our lives for many decades now. And I think for everybody who has heard or experienced the song, it holds a very special place in our hearts, and it certainly holds a very special place in my heart. In that whenever I was faced with difficulties or obstacles or things that I needed to work through in my life, many times this song helped me through. And it kind of reminds me of, the time when I was on the boat with my father during those endless days in the summer. And many times on the boat you have your beautiful days, but you also have your stormy days. And to watch my father, that I have come to know as my Messiah, has been an incredible kind of experience for me. And not only is he my biological father, but he's also my spiritual father and my spiritual guide. And to watch him on the sea during times of calm and during times of incredible stormy weather, I was able to kind of experience the true character of the man. And he was truly something like a gyroscope on the boat that keeps the boat on an even keel, that maintains equilibrium and certainly stabilizes the vessel. And he has been this kind of a metaphorical figure in my life, and I think for lots of brothers and sisters all around the world. And I know that lots of people, now that we have celebrated the second anniversary of our true father's passing, and his ascension into the spirit world, many people are talking about, what is going to happen to the church. So many changes, so many, different people saying different things, not a clear vision of what's going to happen to the future of our movement. And lots of people have voiced their opinions in many, many different ways. But I feel that at times like this, it's kind of important to understand that stormy weather is there to turn us into seasoned sailors. And you cannot be a seasoned sailor if you have never experienced stormy weather. In other words, calm seas do not produce seasoned sailors. And so whenever we experience stormy weather in our life, it's really an opportunity that God gives us to become that seasoned sailor. It gives us a chance to really flex our muscles and build that kind of a muscle that can help us become incredible men and women of God. And so when I think about this, it reminds me of a passage in the Bible, in the book of Mark, in the Gospel of Mark, and chapter 4, verse 35 through 41. And it's a passage where Jesus stills a storm. And this passage happens to be one of my favorite ones in the Bible, because it reminds me of certain life lessons that helps me through my life. And for those of you who know the story, what happens? Well, Jesus gets in the boat and with his disciples says, well, we're going to go to the other side. And of course, I'm sure in the beginning, his disciples were terribly excited. Well, Jesus is going to go to the other side. Let's all go with him. And the initial enthusiasm of getting on the boat and, being there with Jesus, being there in the boat, on the water must have been terribly exciting. But of course, as with most journey, sometimes the beginning starts out with great deal of enthusiasm, but in the course of the journey, in the middle of the journey, especially with such stormy weather pounding on the side of the boat, the disciples started to panic. And, instead of thinking and realizing that their teacher, their guide, Jesus Christ was in the boat with them, the disciples were panicked nonetheless. And many times in the Bible, the boat symbolizes the church, and the open sea symbolizes all the things that the church has to deal with in context of a real life world. And certainly in this boat that is kind of representative of the church or the church community, these are not unified, peaceful disciples, totally there for Jesus, totally there, working together peacefully with Jesus to get to the other side. Sometimes I ask myself, my goodness, thank God the Bible was written many, many, many years ago. Because can you imagine if something like the social media platforms existed back then? The Bible kind of leaves out the conversation that took place amongst the disciples, but I am sure those conversations were not what you could call constructive conversations. They were panicking, they were scared, they were terrified. And, I am sure they questioned Jesus. What the bleep is Jesus doing? I am sure some of the disciples said, why is he so irresponsible? Where is he taking us? He's taking us to our death. What a horrible captain. What a horrible leader. What a horrible, whatever. All the things that people usually express on social media platforms if they don't like somebody. Can you imagine what kind of things must have been spoken on the boat? So much so that the disciples were so upset because not only was Jesus, not being the captain that they wanted him to be, Jesus was in the stern. He wasn't in the front of the boat, he was in the back of the boat, the stern. And furthermore, he was fast asleep on a cushion. Here they are, terrified, panicking, thinking that they were going to perish because the waves were pounding incessantly and persistently on the side of the boat, so much so that the boat was being swamped. And the only thing that their captain or their leader or, whatever they wanted to call Jesus at that moment was doing was that he was fast asleep on a cushion of all things. And the back of the boat, not at the front of the boat, taking care of the people. Maybe sometimes that's how we might feel because we don't see our true Father in the physical form anymore. Our Father has ascended and Father is in spirit world. And we might feel like God is asleep. True Father is asleep. True parents are asleep. We don't have the captain that we want our captain to be like on the front of the boat. The captain is in the back of the boat, fast asleep. What are we supposed to do? And they were so panicked that, they shook Jesus awake and, said, Jesus, teacher, what's he doing? We're perishing. We're about to die. And, teacher, do something. Well, the disciples forgot during this stormy weather who Jesus was. Jesus was the Son of God. Jesus was the teacher that promised to take them from one side of the lake to the other. They willingly and they enthusiastically and in an inspired fashion got in the boat because they know that Jesus will deliver. God will deliver. We only need to look at providential history to realize that God was always working through the good times and the bad times, difficult times and the wonderful times. So when we're smack in the middle of a difficult time, many times we may feel like the captain is not there, or the captain is sleeping, or the captain is at the back of the boat. But we must not forget that God is always there, that our captain, Jesus Christ, is always there in the boat, and that our true Father and our true parents are always there in the boat. And so after the disciples wake Jesus Christ up, what does Jesus do? Jesus rebukes the wind. All of these foolish talks and, complaints and all of these things that are taking place as if it's like a huge, powerful wind engulfing our life. Jesus rebukes it right away. And then he addresses the sea. And what does he say? He addresses this open sea, the stormy seas, this incredibly difficult world, the stormy world that we're living in. And what does Jesus say? Jesus says, peace, be still. Peace, be still. Jesus is asking all of us through this rhetorical question to the sea, where is your peace? I am here. God is here on the boat with you. Where is your peace? I don't know about you, but no matter what happens in my life, as long as I remind myself that God is with me, that Jesus Christ is with me, that true parents are with me, I am at peace. I know that God, true parents, will get me to the other side. So this is a reminder that Jesus is reminding his disciple with. Peace, where is your peace? Why are you panicking? Why are you desperate when the deliverance is already here with you? What are you searching? What more do you need than to know that Jesus is there? And so this is a really wonderful passage to kind of remind ourselves, because many times, just because we don't see, we think things are not there, or we don't see the air, but it is air that sustains us, and we breathe it, we live because of it, and we go on to become incredible men and women of God. And so just because our true Father is not here physically does not mean that we should be panicking on the boat, because God said and promised through Jesus Christ that we're going to get to the other side. So the enthusiasm, the excitement that we initially had when we got on the boat is something that should be worked on through our own responsibility. And we need to kind of inspire ourselves, help ourselves be at peace, knowing that God is always there, that our true parents are always there. And even if it may look like there's no captain on the front of the boat, what is going to happen to the boat? The boat is already sinking. What is going to happen to the boat? But even at times like this, Jesus Christ is saying, where is your faith? Why are you afraid? And so in the passage, after Jesus rebukes the wind and tells the sea, peace, be still, he addresses the disciples. Why are you so afraid? Why are you afraid? Basically, what he is saying is, when I am here, where is your faith? Where is the faith that knows that God will deliver, that Jesus will take us to the other side of the lake? Regardless of how strong the winds, regardless of what predicament our church community might be in, we may look like, we're perishing. We may look like, the boat is being swamped. But even if that may look like our reality, we must not lose faith. We must not forget that God is there. God is there seeing us through. And our true parents are there seeing us through. In a way, our true Father is asking, why are you afraid? Do you not have faith in me? Don't you know that from the other side, I can work even more powerful through you and through me, through us? In a way, this is a time when our true Father is truly empowering us to really be that exciting, empowered individual that can carry on the message, continue testifying about our true parents, continue to share the good news about true parents and the importance of the blessing, having a blessed life, and the importance of living a connected life. In other words, seeing each other as belonging to one family. So in a boat, for our community, true parents are like the captain. And the motto on the boat is one family under God. And the behavior that should govern our state on the boat is true love. So when we are on this boat together with our true parents, and they said, come on, let's go to the other side. They're taking us through the age of the wilderness. When the first generation just gave up so much of their life for the sake of providence. You gave up your education, you gave up your families, you gave up everything to help work with the Messiah, to help work with true parents. Well, Father is saying, hey, okay, that time is done. Now let's go to the other side. Let's go to the age of the settlement. Let's really start working on the reason why we are here. Let's start building incredible families. Let's start, changing our community. And let's start, owning our nations. And let's really build a world of true love. This is what our true parents are saying. So during the times when it is stormy, that's the time when we must be at peace. We must be still in knowing that God and true parents are with us each and every step of the way. So the only thing we need to do is to exercise our 5% portion of responsibility, which means to take care of ourselves, be good people, practice a life of true love, dedicate yourself to a work or a goal or a vision that you deem worthy, and go for it. And always remember that, it doesn't matter how dark the world may seem at times. I know that many, many times, when you're out there on the open sea, and the weather gets really, really scary and stormy, you cannot distinguish the difference between the sky and the water. Everything just seems to turn black. And you feel like you're in the middle of this darkness. But that's why our Heavenly Parent, God, sent us our true parents. In the middle of the darkness, you can be certain of one thing. When the sun goes down, the moon always comes out. And the moon is there, not to dominate us, but the moon is there to illuminate our way. Moon is there to encourage us that even in the darkness, there's a way to get to the other side, and the moon will shine the way. And so it's kind of interesting how the last name of Reverend Sun Myung Moon is Moon. And for those of you who are familiar with the prophecies that exist worldwide, they often talk about this Prince of Peace that will come, that will usher in the next millennium or the next 1,000 years of peace. Well, for those of us who have been lucky enough to be born at a time to really experience true parents, that's us. And we know who true father is. We know who true parents are. So during times of stormy weather, what do we need to do? We need to remember who our true parents are. We must not forget our captain, just because we think that the captain is asleep in the stern on a cushion. Captain is the captain nonetheless. And the fact that the captain is with us means that God will see us to the other side. So instead of being afraid, be at peace. Know that God is working in your life and in my life and in our life. And the only thing we need to do is to keep on going. And so at times of difficulty, when you, just like me, might feel panicky or desperate or scared or simply just fear-stricken, this is a good time to remind ourselves of this passage in the Gospel of Mark when Jesus stills a storm, because we have to understand that God and our true parents are always stilling our storm. And many times we ourselves are the ones that actually manufacture our own storm. And so this is a great time to remind ourselves, peace, be still. And listen to Jesus when Jesus asks us, why are you afraid? Why are you afraid? Where is your faith? So where is your faith? Well, the faith is within your hands, within our hands. And just as the song says, bridge over troubled water. It doesn't matter what kind of a water we are dealing with in our life. God will always provide that bridge. Our true parents will always provide that bridge. And even if we seem like we're lost in the middle of darkness and we feel like there are no answers to be found, be still, be peaceful, meaning work on the important things and don't be desperate on things that we have no control over, which is stormy weather. And let God do the rest. And in that way, we can continue on working on what we need to do, which is, if we really believe that we can create a world of peace, well, let's start with ourselves. Let's be at peace. Let's be still, knowing that God and our true parents are with us. And starting from there, let us take on the world, knowing that we will be delivered to the other side. And God is certainly taking us to the other side of the lake. God is certainly wanting to see us, for us to transition from the age of the wilderness to the age of the settlement, when really true families can bloom like spring. God wants to see that. God wants to experience that. God wants to experience parental joy with each and every one of us. That's why we're here, because we are His loving children. So brothers and sisters, don't forget, our true Father is there, our true Mother is there, and regardless of how difficult the situation may be, we gotta respect the captain. We gotta work with our captain. And we gotta have faith that God is working, regardless of how dark, how stormy, or how difficult situations may be. So with that thought in mind, please have a great day and a wonderful week. Take care.
When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side. Times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled waters. I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled waters. I will lay me down. When you're down and out, when you're on the street, so hard, I will comfort you. I'll take your part. Oh, when darkness comes and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled waters, I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled waters. I will lay me down. Sail on, silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams on the way. See how they shine. I will ease your mind like a bridge over troubled waters. I will ease your
If you have any questions and comments, please leave them below the video or go to enginemoon.com and use the contact form. And don't forget to subscribe to our email list if you want to be updated on all the happenings at our home church. Thanks, take care.